I'll add one little piece. It actually says that the women would separate the wheat from the light of the Beis Hamikdash, separate the wheat, right? Now, the chet of Adam and Chava, many say, was in eating the wheat. Not an apple. Anyway, so that's another remez that we came back to where we were supposed to do. Adam Arishon's chet, which is analogous to the chet ego for the Am Yisrael, is reversed. Now, why the pants and why the belt? Well, that's the lower self. The lower self, the animal part of man. That's dafka what we use for the wicks. We've transformed our Yetzer Hara into or a Hashem. Okay. That's why, and we've explained this before, when Adam and Chava were born, right? What's the first word of creation? First word of creation. If you assume that Breshit is a mimer, that's a debate, but the first Vayihi is Vayihi Or. Or represents the light of Hashem. And when Adam and Chava sinned, what did they get? They changed the Or with an Aleph to an Or with a Ayin. Okay? Which, by the way, represents what number? 70. Which is, like the 70 nations. 70 souls of the Jewish people who have to fix the 70 nations because we've descended all the way down to the Ayin. And what is the Ayin? What is the Or? Blocks the light of Hashem. It's what do you call it? Opaque, because the skin of Adam and Chava was translucent, and now we look like we look. We're opaque. The light of Hashem and our neshamas does not shine, except for very special people. That the Maharal says, you go to special people, they seem to have like a light that emanates from them. You never notice? Big tzaddikim. It's like they themselves illuminate. And that's the Tzelem Elokim, but very few reach that level, unfortunately. Okay, so that is the secret of Simcha Beit HaShoeva. It's that the everything came back to what it was at the time of Kriyat Yam Suf. So understandably, we have the fire celebration at night, right? And the Lulav and Esrog during the day. So, and the Rambam says it's all an extension of the same mitzvah. The Lulav and Esrog is a mitzvah from the Torah. The rabbinic mitzvah, including Misa Chamayim, by the way, was the Simcha Beit HaShoeva was night, and one merged into another, which is why, how long did they celebrate? From Mincha till the morning, because that's the time that the fiery cloud burnt as fire, because in the morning it went back to smoke or whatever it was.
Excuse me, could you just say again, what was the rabbinic one?
Is the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, the fire celebration, the night celebration, which went all night because it represented the Amud Ha'esh. Okay, that's my interpretation. Okay, now, if that's true, you understand an interesting coincidence and why maybe the rabbis secretly choose the word Chalil to represent that party. I mean, there was every which instrument at that party. The Chalilim were the last instruments that were added to. Oh, I think that was also in Hamodia. They showed pictures of the instruments of the Beis Hamikdash. Did you see that? Yeah. I do not work for Modia, by the way, so this is free advertising. But they had different string instruments, a harp, the Kinor David. David played the Kinor for Shaul HaMelech. He didn't necessarily play the Chalil. Not necessarily. The Chalil has 4 letters. 2 of them are Lameds. Lulav has 4 letters. 2 of them Lamed. What do the extra letters of each word spell? Well, if you have Chalil and you take out the 2 Lameds, you get a Chalil. You're going to get what? A Yud and a Chet. If you take out the 2 Lameds from Lulav, what remains? A Vav and a Beis. Chet, Yud, Vav, Beis. What does it spell? Chiyuv. It's all one Chiyuv. It's one unit of a mitzvah. Wow. The Amudei Ha, that's mine also. The Amudei Ha Eish transforming in the morning to the Amud Ha'anan. This is the core concept of Sukkah. And then back at night, and we do it day and night and night and day. The Chalil and the Lulav, according to the Rambam, are the same mitzvah. Now, since that is the case, I think we've answered all our questions. Now let's go on to the completion of the Torah. What that Sukkot really means is that the unity between Hashem and Klal Yisrael was restored. That's why Shmini Atzeres, do we have anybody else around besides us and Hashem? No one's allowed around, right? All the 70 nations are sent home. I heard they had a nice parade here. Like 100 nations, little Christian nations come here to, you know that?
Yeah, I met some of them.
Based on the Navi that says that they better show up on Sukkot to come, right? The Navi says that if the nations of the world don't come up on Sukkot, they're not going to get rain, they're going to get all kinds of problems. They better show up. So they show up. About 100 different nations were represented. This has been going on for about 20 years, but especially since the Six-Day War.
We met people from
New Caledonia, which is in the middle of Africa, right?
West Africa.
No, West Africa,
Yeah,
right?
that's what he said.
Oh, they're all over us. You don't understand. They're so ready. We're like, I'm in overdraft from Yontif, you know. And they're like, when is the salvation in the temple coming? You know. That's the challenge. That's the challenge of Eretz Yisrael. You have to see through that opaqueness, through the or, to get to the or with Aleph. That's our challenge, because we're here working on it every day. They're out in New Caledonia, so they dream about it, you know. So now, the unity between Hashem and Klal Yisrael is cemented by virtue of what? And only one thing, the Torah. Hence, what do we do on Shmini Aseres Simchas Torah? We dance with the Torah. Because that's the culmination of the Chag HaSukkot. Because Sukkot has a universal aspect to it. By virtue of the fact that the Jewish people are the Am HaNivchar and we're close to Hashem, we can spread Hashem's Shekhinah to the world, to the 70 nations, and diminish their Yetzer Hara, and hopefully connect them to Hashem. That's all great. But the last day of Yontif, the 8th day, and remember, in Simchas Beis HaShueva, the rabbis juggled either 4 torches or 8 torches. 4 torches, again, 4 letter names of Hashem. 8 torches, Shmini Atzeres, because that's the unique, that's the above 7. 70 is 10 times 7. But 8 is Lamala Min HaTeva, as the Maral says countless times. And that's for the special relationship between us and Hashem, having nothing to do with the Umos HaOlam. And that's only by virtue of one thing, the Torah itself, our commitment to Torah mitzvahs and Torah learning, period. So we dance with the Torah, because that's what it's all about. So, let's think about now, let's go to the very last pasuk in the Torah. I promised you, Leyney Kol Yisroel Breshit, right? Using what we just learned, you're going to understand a tremendous question from the very last pasuk of the Torah. It speaks about, you know what the last pasuk in the Torah speaks about? What do the last pasukim in the Torah speak about? Moshe Rabbeinu. Some say Moshe wrote it, that Hashem dictated it to him, because it was about his death and about him. Some say Yeshua wrote it. The Machlokas in the Gemara. Either way, it's part of the Torah. It's the bridge between the Torah Shebechsav and the Torah Shebal Peh, in some sense, as is all the book of Devarim. That's another story. So it says about Moshe, L'kol ha'osos v'hamofsim asher shalocho Adonai la'asos be'eretz Mitzrayim leparo chol avoda v'chol artzo. Speak about the great miracles that he did. And here's the last pasuk in the Torah. Not only the miracles he did in Mitzrayim for Paro, but also something else. What in your mind was the other greatest achievement of Moshe Rabbeinu outside of Mitzrayim? Matan Torah. So it says, Ulechol hayad hachazaka. Why did Moshe need extremely strong hands at Matan Torah? Because the luchos were incredibly heavy and no human being could possibly carry them. and he was given strong hands. Says Rashi, Shekibel es haTorah beluchos biyadav. That was a tremendous feat of strength, not only physical strength, but of course spiritual greatness. So that's great. We're going to talk about the Yad HaChazaka Moshe. Moshe's greatest achievement of all time is beyond the Makos, the receiving of the Luchos from Hashem. Imagine putting that on your resume. Oh yeah, I worked at Fusion Computers, and I received the Luchos from Hashem. That's impressive. That's a great achievement.
What you work for?
But he worked for Hashem. So what was the greatest? But what was the ultimate? That's not the end of the pasuk. Listen to the end of the pasuk. There's something even greater than that. What could be greater than the 10 makos, kriyas yamsuf, that was done in the witness of Paro and his avadim and his whole nation, and better even than that great feat of Kabbalah Satorah? What else did Moshe do that might have trumped that? Pardon the expression. It says here, Ulechol Hamora Hagadol, and the strong and awesome power of Moshe, Asher Asa Moshe Leyney Kol Yisroel, not in the eyes of Paro and his nation, but that he did in front of the Jewish people. Now, when Moshe received the Luchos, was he in the front of the Jewish people? No. He was not with them at all. He was way above them. So what was this great feat that he did that Kol Yisroel witnessed? Rashi says, "Shenasa'o libo lishbor haluchos le'eineihem," that he decided to smash the luchos in their faces, as it says, "Ve'eshperem le'eineichem." The word le'einei Kol Yisroel, says Rashi, is an explicit reference to the breaking of the luchos. And what does Hashem say about that? Hiskima dasa kadosh baruch hu l'dato shenemar asher shibarta yashar koach asher. You did a great thing, Moshe. And according to the sequence in Rashi, even greater than receiving the Torah, the final, ultimate act of Moshe Rabbeinu's career was the breaking of the luchos. Wait a minute, it's like it like ends on a kind of a clunky note, And the 10 plagues, and Kriyas Yamsuf, and what the awe in front of Paro, and receiving the Torah, and breaking the luchos. That was probably the most tragic moment in Moshe Rabbeinu's life, we might think about it in our limited understanding. And this is the greatest act. This is the greatest achievement of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yes, it is. Why? Think about everything we've said. Moshe was Eved Hashem. He had no personal agenda. He didn't have a resume. He didn't care to put on his resume that he finished, that he did all the makos and that he received the luchos. He cared about one thing and one thing only: connecting Hashem to the Jewish people. He was like the sukkah himself, right? The wondrous clouds of fire, and that was Moshe Rabbeinu. He was the one that was the conduit between Hashem and the Jewish people. His entire agenda was and always would be keeping Kol Yisroel and Hashem together. So what's the medium that keeps us together? The Torah. So his main achievement was to get them out of Paro, where they can't serve Hashem, and give them the Torah so they can serve Hashem. That's the whole story. So why did he break them? Because there's a problem. It was Egel HaZahav, right? Remember we said the first sukkahs went away. The first Adon Merkava went away. What are we going to do now? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, if I give them the luchos now, what's that like? It's like there was a marriage and there was infidelity at the very beginning of the marriage. That's crushing. That crushes the marriage and that renders it impossible to repair. However, if the marriage never took place, and if it was just discussed, Na'aseh v'nishma. Okay, we talked about it. Hashem says, it was like a date. We're interested in going out. Na'aseh v'nishma. And Hashem says, let me introduce myself. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. But nothing happened until the Luchos came down. Nothing really happened. The Rashi and Chazal describe it as Moshe leading the bride to the chuppah, which is the Torah. He biyom close Moshe. The Mishkan was the canopy, the portable Har Sinai, which was the wedding canopy between Hashem and the Jewish people. And that's why the Aron Kodesh is in there with the angels and the Luchos. It's a portable Har Sinai, so it can stay with us. So Moshe Rabbeinu came up with a brilliant idea. He said, let's call off the marriage before it happens, give the Kala a chance to regroup, do tshuva, get her act together, and then we'll, call me in 6 weeks. You take a break from going out, it's not going so well. All right, take a break, and then at some point they say, that was the boy I always really wanted to date. The Shadchan works hard, gets them to go back together. So Moshe Rabbeinu had one agenda. The same agenda that led him to receive the Luchos made it mandatory that he break the Luchos. Because the giving of the Luchos at that moment would have thwarted his entire life purpose. Now what does that have to do with the beginning of the Torah? Breshit bar Elokim. What's the first Rashi everybody knows? Bereshis. Why is... Be is like ba'ad, for something. It should say, Rashis, bar Elokim, right? Why Bereshis? Bishvil Torah shenikra Rashis, u bishvil Yisroel shenikra Rashis. Very simple. You want to know the story of the world? The story of the world, the happy ending of the world will happen when Hashem, the Jewish people, and the Torah are one. End of story. That's the beginning of the story, and that's the end of the story. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu was only fulfilling what the first letter of the Torah taught. And there's a complete unity, a symmetry between the beginning and end of the Torah. That's my understanding. Okay? So, but let's go. We have a couple minutes left. Let's just go into the creation of man, the last thing, something from Parshas Breshit. How many times in Breshit are we told that Hashem created man, Zachar and Nekeva? How many times? Everybody knows two. Perek Aleph and Perek Beis. Rav Soloveitchik's, one of his most famous essays is about Adam the first and Adam the second. When he compares the psukim, which we don't have time to do in detail, but what Rashi tells us is that, we know the first story is, in the first parak, Adam is created as a being that was du partsufim, according to Medrash. It was a man, woman together. It was one creature, so to speak, that was both male and female. And that man, that Adam, had two children, Cain and Hevel. And then, however, ultimately, Hashem wanted them split. So he separated them, and he took the tzela, he took the rib, or tail, whatever it was, and he builds out of each face a separate being, a male and a female. So Rashi says the story in the first parak is about how they started, and then Hashem went further and separated them. Why did he go back? Why did he separate them? And the Medrashim tell us, because of man's loneliness. Everybody, Zachar and Nekeva was a separate unit in every creature of mankind, of the Hashem's creation in the animal kingdom. And you didn't have that. Man didn't have that experience. He had a loneliness. That's why Rashi tells us he brought each of the animals to call them a name. Calling a name means you kind of interview them and speak to them and decide what they're all about. Rashi goes further and says he tried to make it his mate. He tried to, try to live with the porcupine. I don't know how that's possible. Adam must not have been very comfortable. What's that? Anyway, so he tried, but he had nobody. So Hashem ultimately creates out of Adam a partner. But that's not the end of the story. And by the way, when they were that way, they were never together, because Adam, after the sin, separated himself from Chava for 130 years and never had children with her until he was challenged to go back, just very similar to the story of Amram and Miriam. You know how Miriam gave Musar to her father, says, you separated from our mother and now, you're worse than Paro because not only will it not be, there's not going to be Zacharim, there's not going to be Nekevos. So Lamach, who's one of the characters in Breshit, in the Parsha Breshit, he unwittingly murdered his great-grandfather Cain. It was an accident. His wives didn't want anything to do with him. And he killed his own son, Tuval Cain. And his wives were rightfully upset at him for this horrible accident. He shot him thinking he was an animal because he saw a horn. A whole story the Medrash tells us. Tuval Cain and Lamech murdered, accidentally, Cain after 7 generations. And his wives rejected him. And Lamech came to Adam Arishon, the Zayda, and he said, I got a problem. I got to talk to you about this problem. He says, we were commanded, Pru or Vu, we were commanded to have more children. Nebuchadnezzar ended up killing one of my children. I want to have more children, but my wives don't want anything to do with me. So he complained, Rashi tells us. And what does Adam say to him? Adam says to him, listen, what's the big deal? If you separated from them, then you did something wrong, right? Because you didn't want to do the mitzvah. But since they separated from you, you're off the hook. And then Lamach delivers the knockout punch. He says, so why did you celebrate voluntarily from your wife Chava? You just told me that if I did such a thing, it would be an Aveira. Kashot atzmacha, get your own act together. And he decides to go back to Chava. And the child that they have is named Shes. The last 2 letters of the Aleph base, by the way. Very interesting. Last 2 letters of the Aleph base. It was a beginning and an ending. It was the end of the era of Gan Eden, where Cain and Hevel were born, and it didn't work out. Gan Eden didn't work out very well for mankind. And then there was the regular world, in which they had to plow through, come back up the ladder of the Chamishim Amma and see about rebuilding after a terrible loss. So that was when Adam came together. But that is all understood. That's Perek Aleph and Perek Beis. So there's one more reference, and that's the question. Listen to this pasuk. It's in Perek Hey, towards the very end of Breshit. It says, remember the pasuk, Zeh Sefer Toldos HaAdam. Remember that? This is the book of the generations of man. Rashi says that Adam was shown the future of mankind, just like Moshe was shown the future of Eretz Yisrael. A lot of parallels here. So what happened? This is the generations of Adam. Biyom baro Elohim Adam. Starting from the day that Hashem created them. Bidmus Elohim asa oso. Hashem made him in his image. Zachar unikeva bira'am. He created them male and female. Vayivarech osam vayikra es shmam. And he called their names. Not Adam called the name like he did with the animals, but Hashem calls the name of Adam and Chava together Adam. Wait, it's 2 people. Why are you calling them by one name? Biyom he bar'am. He created them and called them Adam. Meaning, there's a 3rd creation story of man. So Or Chaim HaKadosh says, yeah, you know why we needed a 3rd one? One was this supreme being that could do anything, that was created male, female, 2-faced. Then there was the one which was lonely in the garden, right? A little bit lower madrega, and we had to separate them so we could have a helpmate. And then there was the one even lower than that was going to create generations that would go lower and lower and lower until they needed a Noah and later an Abraham to save them. So,
Why is the second one on the lower level?
because all they could do then was deal with the Gan. They didn't have much. 1 second, please. Hello? Miza? Ken, Miza? Ken. אני חוזר. Bye. Okay, so I was trying to help somebody out with a lawyer. I was a lawyer. So why the third? The second one was Hashem took, the Adam is a Nebuch. The first one, Adam is the king. Redu b'gedas hayam. That's Rabbi Soloveitchik's thesis. He's put in charge of all of mankind. He's a Superman. And then the second one, he's like misken kazeh. Can't find a partner. He's a gardener. He's a little gardener. Has a little gardening job, you know? Like the Mexicans. You know, they take him around, they clean up a little bit, give him a few dollars. Nothing. No greatness. Man is sometimes vulnerable. Man is sometimes, more importantly, vibrates between the two states. Between the neshama, which can do anything, and the guf, which is very limited. And we go between those two poles. Sometimes we're like Perak Aleph Adam. We can do everything. It's like being bipolar, a little bit, lahavdil. And sometimes we are very vulnerable and needy, and we realize just how insignificant we are. Sometimes it's bishvili nivra olam. Bishvili nivra olam. My kid says to me, I'm the greatest in the world. I go, oh, if you're the greatest in the world, then you're responsible to take care of it. Oh no, I don't want to be the greatest in the world anymore. That's what Rabbi Nachman says that. He says, if the world was created for me, what does that mean? I'm great? No, it means you have an awful lot of responsibility. You better make sure everything is going well in your world, and just and right. You got a lot of work. So basically, that's Adam the first, Adam the second, but then there's Adam the third, really. And there's even an Adam the fourth. We won't go into that. But the third Adam is, we are Adam. We are human. We are human. Okay? And there will be failure. And there will be need for tshuva. And Hashem understands this. And Hashem is forbearing. And He's willing to wait 10 generations, right? For these people to do tshuva. That's the third Adam. And actually, that was the Adam and Chava that created Shes. That created the child that would, out of which would come the redemption of mankind. Right? Out of Shes comes eventually Noach. Right? And after Noach, Avram, etc. And eventually Moshe Rabbeinu, etc. And all of Kol Yisroel. So we made the transition. The clouds have come back. The fiery celebration is with us. Our job is to take it into the year. Right? The Mabul is coming. We're maybe in the stage of Noach, which means there's hope, but we have a lot of work to do. So Bishop will help us. We should have a wonderful, a gazinte winter, and we'll get back on track for our shiurim, and we should see feel the closeness of Hashem that we felt on Sukkot. The Chalil should return to use. Okay.